So I have finally seen Denis Villeneuve's Dune Part 2, and unsurprisingly, it's a cinematic masterpiece from the auteur filmmaker. I was completely floored by the way Denis has elevated what we got in Part 1, and how specifically he brought the ending of Frank Herbert's seminal novel to life. It's part epic, part moving, part reflective, and for me, it may be the new benchmark for science fiction filmmaking on the big screen. So in this video, I'm going to be giving you my spoiler-free review for Dune Part 2, discussing why it's one of my favourite sci-fi movies of all time, and why I think it might be Denis Villeneuve's magnum opus. Before I get into my review though, if you want to keep up to date on any of my upcoming content for Dune Part 2 during its release, including breakdowns and a spoiler-filled video essay, then don't forget to support this upload by giving it a like rating, subscribing to the channel, and turning on your notifications. But without further ado, let's dive into my review for Dune Part 2. It's been a long wait to see Dune Part 2 finally come to the big screen, and after delays and so much anticipation, Denis Villeneuve's film is absolutely incredible. Masterpiece is often a word that is thrown around a lot for great movies of our era, and hell, I've been accused of that many times with films like the first Dune, The Batman, Oppenheimer, and other event films breaking ground. But after watching Dune Part 2, it's hard to call it anything other than a masterpiece because the film is truly exceptional. After watching it, I barely had any big criticisms other than, as a book reader, being slightly disappointed that some characters were cut down or cut out of the final piece. But that does not in any way, shape or form drag down Villeneuve's film, because it drives with mesmerizing pace, and the central themes, beats and storylines of the novel play out perfectly with added elevation. Known as the unfilmable sci-fi novel, Denis Villeneuve set out to achieve his dream of telling Paul Atreides' story on the desert planet of Arrakis, with the first film being a critical success and making over $400 million at the box office, despite releasing on HBO Max at the same time due to the pandemic. Writers and actors strikes then posed a new problem for Part 2, but Villeneuve has delivered a new kind of sci-fi spectacle for the big screen with his second entry. The table was laid and the world building was done, and Part 2 could hold nothing back in its efforts to create a new kind of big screen experience for the next generation of moviegoers like nothing before it. For me, it's a more muscular movie than the first, it's more powerful, it's darker, and it's weirder, bringing to life some of the most complex yet engaging ideas from Frank Herbert's novel in surreal blockbuster fashion. It might just be the best sequel of our time, and Villeneuve may have just asserted himself as one of the greatest sci-fi directors. When it comes to the plot of Dune Part 2, Villeneuve and his co-writer Jon Spaihts have put together a dense script with almost every major plotline from the novel being brought to screen. It's a script that seduces both fans of the material and newcomers without making a watch of Part 1 absolutely necessary. I mean, I would recommend it, but it's more power to the screenplay for being able to focus on Part 2 as an individual film. The story picks up immediately after the end of the first one, with Paul Atreides and Lady Jessica joining the Fremen in their long fight against the Harkonnens, beginning with the body transporting of Jamis in a similar structure to Herbert's novel. We soon learn that while Stilgar and his Fremen followers believe that Paul is the Messiah that will lead them to paradise, that the younger Fremen, which eventually includes Chani, become more skeptical. Villeneuve and co fill the first hour or so with battle scenes showing the fierce counter of Fremen warriors in their fight against the Harkonnens too. It's brutal, operatic, and quite simply stunning to watch on screen. But these scenes are also countered with the more human moments that make the central themes of this story all the more interesting, and it's done so in a much deeper way than what we got in Herbert's novel. As Paul slowly wins over the Fremen, it stresses on the two sides of reaction to his rising stature, and framing that more through Zendaya's Chani was a genius move by the filmmaker, as it didn't just deepen the character characters involved, but it also enriches the true internal struggles of the Dune story out loud. On the other side of things, there's the Baron Vladimir Harkonnen, who calls in his psychotic nephew Feyd-Rautha to bring Arrakis back under control, and their involvement on Gedi Prime is contrasted and visually differentiated in a perfect way using black and white infrared. Just like the book, they don't quite realise that the Fremen Muad'Dib is actually the last surviving member of House Atreides, and that in turn it could stop the Baron's hidden quest for the throne and the Emperor's continuous rule. With Feyd, the Emperor, and Princess Irulan, these characters have been expanded upon in part 2, and we get moments with them that you would never have expected after reading the material. This itself helps us connect more to the conflict and the characters involved, and yet with all the complexity in religion and politics spread out across the extensive list of figures, Villeneuve is able to bring it all down into something meaningful and approachable. It rests on the love story between Paul and Charlie, with their chemistry quickly selling the romance to us. This was something that may have been a problem under different directorial hands, because a lot of that early bonding is skipped over in the novel due to a big 2-year time skip. Villeneuve has effectively made changes to the whole structure of his second part so that the characters will have more depth, and so that by the time we get to the ending, the decisions and outcome is much more powerful than expected. There's a true sincerity to the scenes that Chalamet and Zendaya share, and it becomes a somewhat warm contrast to the brutalist feeling of other sequences in the movie. The turmoil of the film doesn't just come from the war between multiple sides, it's within those individual sides as well, bringing us more complexity to what could have just been a linear telling of the Chosen One storyline. It really is an epic expansion of everything from the book, and again, the only thing I could consider as being weaker here is the lessening impact of other characters from the novel to make way for the central players in the plot. Speaking of those complex relationships though, one of the standout aspects of part 2 is of course the incredible individual performances that drive the movie. Despite an even more stacked cast in the second film, each character has a scene-stealing moment, yet the two leads are able to shine through with the strongest work. We get the subversive extremity of Paul Atreides, and Timothée Chalamet does an unbelievable job of showcasing the turn of his character. Frank Herbert intended Dune to be a critique of the charismatic leader, and with Villeneuve doubling down on that in his writing and direction, Chalamet is able to play Paul with range and a constant sense of doom. We see how Paul grapples with both revenge and his inner fears of destructive destiny, with Chalamet subtly showing that turn before exploding in moments on screen too. It's all the anti-hero you'd want and expect from Dune, and thanks to the leading actor, we get a performance that delivers anger, despair, and passion all at the same time. Then there's Zendaya's Chani, who is exactly what Villeneuve said she was in being the movie's true heart. There's more toughness in her performance than as described in the book, but then there's also a depiction of sadness there too, with all the fanaticism around Paul, and once she realises the true end of their cause. And the rest of the cast is just as impressive, even though a few characters get shorter screen time. Javier Bardem still is at times a comforting figure amongst the Fremen, even though he becomes uncompromising in his pursuit of their religious ideals. Rebecca Ferguson as Lady Jessica has more political impact here too, being allowed to fully go into the Bene Gesserit schemes surrounding Paul, becoming both his ally and antagonist. Their paths do become quite different to the material, but the impact of Jessica is just as important, becoming more effective than her arc in part 1. And when it comes to the antagonists, Stellan Skarsgård's Baron Harkonnen and Dave Bautista's Raban get some great moments but are slightly sidelined because the viewpoint of their side is primarily fixated on Austin Butler's unhinged Feyd-Rautha. Feyd is as psychotic as you would expect and at times barely human, and it's not just his look that drives that, it's the way the actor uses his voice, movements, and the way he delivers certain lines that help communicate the reverse ideals between him and Paul. all. He's a walking example of violence, and it reminds you of how effective some of the best franchises have split their heroes and villains down the middle using performances, designs, and thematics. The great thing about Denis Villeneuve's Dune though is that here, no one is strictly heroic, and on top of the characters communicating that, the production and aesthetics elevate that too. Again, there are changes to some of the character work, especially with a certain Atreides that might upset purists of the novel, but the path is the same, and the impact of the main beats of the story is what carries it over the line and then some. The director maintains the certain weirdness and power of a particular character, and in my opinion, the changes made lead to a better adaptation. Herbert wanted his original book to be a warning, and he felt that he needed to write another book to make that clearer. Villeneuve understood that assignment, dialed that up to 11, and then made certain changes that were necessary for the overall piece. Another absolute standout element of part 2, which to be honest I could probably gush over for a whole entire video, is the epic elevation of the film through both its battle sequences and the filmmaking work to capture it. With the amount of story elements for Villeneuve to put on screen in almost a 3-hour runtime, part 2 doesn't lose its momentum nor feel like there's too much because it is structured perfectly. It rivals some of the best action and war movies through great pacing and an impeccable craft. The battle scenes, especially those in the final hour, are some of the most impressively put together sequences since Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings. You follow every character through these moments, and the fight choreography lets you feel every impact, reminding you that in the hands of another studio or blockbuster property, that this could have been executed poorly. Moving on, cinematographer Greg Fraser, who won the Best Cinematography Oscar the first time out, has topped his achievements once again, with painting-like photography using colour and light in stunning fashion during both the intimate and wide-angle shots. Then there's Hans Zimmer, who once again delivers with his score, doing an even better job of differentiating the themes of the different factions and cultures. And finally, the visual effects work and sound design here have reached new heights, with part 2 feeling like they work hand in hand to create an incredibly visceral and detailed experience for the audience. It's especially remarkable what the VFX team accomplished with this, and you feel every penny of that increased budget put straight on screen with stunning sandworm action, explosions, and fully realised battles. For me, it's a new achievement in tactile action cinema, and on a technical level, it combines the escapism and detail that very few blockbusters manage to capture. So overall, Dune Part 2 is the kind of blockbuster you get when a studio and filmmaker are willing to go all out on something gigantic, but do so with care and attention, making a modern event film in the practices of the old, where things are photographed with real detail and characters are allowed to give performances with true nuance. We don't get enough of them in this current era, but when we do, it strikes a chord and the audience most of the time turns up to support it. I can see the same thing happening with Dune Part 2 and the execution of the piece, ranging from its approach to story to the way it's executed. The action is its own character in Part 2, and everything has been well thought out, from the fighting styles to the framing of action to the combined use of practical work and VFX. It's everything you want in a modern day blockbuster epic, and it's not afraid to take risks, expand on the material, and end on darker sensibilities. These sensibilities are there in the book anyway, and by understanding the material and where this story is going, Denis Villeneuve has given us the ultimate second chapter in his planned trilogy. Those who didn't love the first film's open ending might find a similar problem with the end of Part 2, but for me, having read the book and understanding that this part is a chapter of revenge and destiny, I found power in those ending scenes. Even though it will be a struggle to wait for Messiah after how good Part 2 was, I will be patient when it comes to the closing chapter of Villeneuve's adaptation. It definitely promises a lot, and when it comes to science fiction, it seems that Denis consistently raises the game. In my opinion, it's the best movie of the year so far, and I struggle to see how a film of this scale will be able to satisfy me as much as this did. Of course, that may happen, but like Oppenheimer last year, it feels like a once-in-a-generation film. But that was my spoiler-free review for Denis Villeneuve's Dune Part 2. Going into the director's adaptation of Dune, there were many ways that this could have failed. It was labelled an unfilmable sci-fi book for a reason, but not only does Part 2 succeed in its adaptation, it surpasses everything in the first film, taking a strange and tragic story and pushing it forward towards culminating blockbuster heights. It was a gamble by Villeneuve to deliver a two-part epic of Herbert's novel, but he has done so incredibly well with both nuance and significance. But yet there's the opportunity to truly round off Paul's story with a Messiah film, and it could be incomplete if you couldn't wrap up this trilogy. I think it's bound to happen after the kind of film we got here, as Dune Part 2 took the simplicity of a space opera, combined it with the prescient themes of the novel, and we ended up with an entirely new piece. With its central focus on critiquing the hero, Part 2's execution redefines what kind of stories event blockbusters can tell, and I think it will be a long while before we see a science fiction film on the level that this was. That's of course unless Messiah comes along and raises the bar even further. I'm giving Dune Part 2 a rating of 9.5 out of 10. But to those who have already seen the film, what did you think of Denis Villeneuve's Dune Part 2, and do you agree that it's a science fiction film for the ages? Like I said, for me, it's a leap up from the original, and I wouldn't be surprised if it continues the trend of that film, earning lots of award nominations later this year. It's all subjective, and I appreciate a range of reactions and reviews, so let me know down below in the comment section what you personally thought towards the film, alongside things that stood out with your first impressions. For much more videos and news on Denis Villeneuve's Dune universe, then subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Also, if you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like rating and follow me on social media via the links in the description. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I've been Cortex, and as always, make some noise.